Let's sit down and run a cold, systemic diagnostic on your current material layout. If you have recently shifted your consciousness into the monad, your uncreated, absolute internal spark, you are likely looking at your bank accounts, your bills, and your outstanding loans with a completely different set of eyes. You are no longer seeing numbers on a screen. You are seeing the literal wires of an Archontic control grid. Think about how you used to view debt before this shift. You looked at it through the Matrix operating system. The system told you that debt was a moral failure, a heavy blanket of shame, or a chronic state of survival anxiety that you just had to endure. That exact emotional reaction, that tight sinking feeling in your chest every time a statement arrives, is exactly what the demiurgic architecture wants. It doesn't just want your money, it wants the low vibrational emotional energy, the loosh, generated by your constant panic. Debt is the ultimate Archonic anchor, designed to keep your terminal locked into a heavy reactive timeline. The moment you shift into the monad, the entire game changes. You look across the table and realize that the prison wardens can only harvest you if you remain emotionally compliant with their scripts. So, the very first step to clearing Archonic financial debt isn't an external scramble for quick cash. It is an internal execution of absolute neutrality. You must look at your debt and strip it of its invisible authority. It is not a curse. It is not a measure of your worth. It is simply a geometric data loop inside a temporary material simulation. When you sit down to audit your finances from this state of monadic sovereignty, you stop pleading with the matrix to change. You don't waste energy wishing the layout was different or stressing over how cold the environment feels. Instead, you step directly into what the ancient Gnostic texts call repose, a state of unshakable internal stillness. From this stillness, you look at the debt as an external puzzle, a piece of loose code that needs to be systematically dismantled with military discipline. The Archons thrive in the fog of ambiguity, procrastination, and the classic survival phrase, "I'll figure it out later." That fog is their playground. To shatter it, you pull up every single account, every hidden interest rate, and every minor subscription leak. You document the exact boundaries of the trap. By measuring the layout with absolute clarity, you pull the data out of the shadow realm and onto your own sovereign battlefield. You face the numbers not with fear, but with the cold detachment of an auditor tracking a system glitch. This is where the true shift happens. You realize that your cash flow is a current of energy, and up until now, the Matrix has been allowed to dictate its direction through unmonitored leaks and impulsive, reactive spending. By cutting off the unnecessary siphons and organizing your resources with strict precision, you close the circuit. You stop feeding the panic loop that keeps the simulation running. You are no longer a passive carcass being slowly bled dry by systemic interest rates. You are a conscious terminal, actively reclaiming its territory. This clean circuit break is the foundational blueprint for a total financial jailbreak, setting the stage for the physical execution strategies we will unpack in Part 2. Now that we have established the internal firewall of absolute neutrality and mapped out the trap, let's move directly into the operational mechanics of the physical jailbreak. In our first conversation, we looked at how the demiurgic matrix relies on your panic and shame to keep you locked into a heavy, reactive timeline. Once you shift completely into the monad and strip the debt of its emotional leverage, you are ready to execute the practical, cold warrior strategies required to systematically dissolve these Archonic anchors. Let's look at your immediate material layout. The matrix operates on systemic scripts like compound interest, collection notices, and rigid payment structures. These are designed to keep your terminal in a permanent state of scarcity, forcing you to trade all of your vital creative energy just to keep your head above water. To break this loop, you must apply the monadic principle of movement and repose. You keep your internal consciousness in absolute stillness, completely detached from the chaos, while your external actions move with fluid, mathematical precision. The first physical directive is the absolute consolidation and isolation of the siphons. You take the data you gathered during your sovereign audit and prioritize the debts based on their energetic drag, usually the ones with the highest interest rates or the most aggressive automated reminders. You do not try to fight the entire grid at once. Instead, you deploy your resources defensively, focusing your financial power to crush one specific node of the trap at a time, while maintaining a strict holding pattern on the rest. You pay the minimum requirements to keep the other gatekeepers at bay, ensuring they cannot trigger an emergency script that breaches your firewall. As you execute this plan, the Matrix will inevitably test your resolve. A collection agency might call, or an unexpected bill might land in your immediate environment. In the old operating system, this would trigger an immediate drop in your frequency, sending you straight back into survival mode. Under the Monadic protocol, you handle these occurrences with total detachment. If you must interact with the legalistic mechanisms of the Matrix, such as negotiating a payment plan or communicating with a bank teller, you do so with zero emotional compliance. You speak with the cold, polite, and unyielding professionalism of a terminal that is simply interacting with a computerized interface. You do not beg for mercy from a parasite. You state your terms, secure the contract, and log off. Every time a debt is completely zeroed out, you are not just clearing a financial balance, you are recovering a piece of your stolen light force. You take that newly liberated cash flow and immediately reroute it to crush the next boundary of the trap, creating an accelerated snowball effect of pure momentum. You stop treating money as a tool for matrix status or impulsive comfort, viewing it instead strictly as fuel for your absolute independence. By organizing your life with this level of disciplined precision, you slowly but surely starve the Archontic grid of both its financial interest and its emotional loosh. The tight, suffocating loops of the simulation begin to collapse because they no longer have any leverage over your timeline. You have successfully transitioned from a heavily burdened captive within the layout to a self-contained, sovereign terminal completely free of the system's gravity, standing fully prepared to exit the Matrix on your own terms. Compiled by John Kyrux on 27 May 2026.